It's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander, he's not here. He's enjoying a well-deserved vacation. He'll be back next week. David Cobb's here, though. Appreciate him. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel. Do that while you're here. Let's get into it. The Pac-12 continues to try to remake itself. I think if you're watching live, the information we have is all up to date. If you're watching this later, things could have changed. This is a minute-by-minute, hour-by-hour situation. But as of this minute, I believe what we got is Washington State and Oregon State, plus, as we learned last week, Colorado State, Fresno State, Boise State, San Diego State, plus, as we learned yesterday, Utah State. The Pac-12 currently has 7 all-sports members. There are conflicting reports about whether Gonzaga would join as a non-football member. The AAC schools, specifically Memphis and South Florida and Tulane, have declined the opportunity to join the Pac-12, recommitted themselves to the AAC. David Cobb, I think that covers most of the bullet points. Just as someone who covers college athletics, what do you make of what we've been seeing over the past week or so?
Well, we have 2 Mountain West now. How great is that?
I always thought we needed another Mountain West.
As of this moment, that's what it looks like. This is all evolving and changing quite rapidly, but it's ridiculous. It's senseless that we now have 2 leagues full of, used parts on the football side, way better on the basketball side, but full of a bunch of used parts on the football side. And we're splintering those into 2 factions that are now at war with each other. It's completely senseless. And it's maddening because from a basketball point of view, the Mountain West was a really good conference and it had all this potential to continue to be a really good conference. And now it's breaking apart and the good teams are kind of going in different directions. And I kind of hate it. It stinks. It's kind of the worst of college sports unfolding in front of our eyes.
Yeah, conference realignment has been that for 20 plus years now. I like if you end up on the right side of the rope, I guess it's a good thing for your university, for your athletic department, for your alma mater. But the chaos connected to all of it has always been a little unsettling. And I do think ultimately when we look back at everything that has transpired decades from now, we'll recognize, and I've said this before, others have as well, we'll recognize that we did not do this right, that everybody chasing the dollar with little else mattering, it has come with a cost. And, conferences that make no geographical sense whatsoever, that are going to require student athletes to bounce all around the country in ways that they never have and probably shouldn't. It's just, we'll look back on it and realize we made some mistakes, but we are where we are. It is what it is. And I guess let's focus on what is the biggest basketball component connected to this at this moment. And that is whether Gonzaga will leave the West Coast Conference for this new Pac-12 as a non-football member or remain in the WCC. The reason this has become a big national story in the past 24 hours is because Brett McMurphy, a big national reporter, reported definitively that Gonzaga is leaving the West Coast Conference to join the Pac-12. Very quickly, that report was refuted by some, and then Gonzaga's athletic director actually went on the record and said that is not an accurate report. Now, full disclosure, Brett is my friend. We both came up as Conference USA beat writers. I was covering the Memphis Tigers, and he was covering the South Florida Bulls, and that is how far back we go. He is one of the best reporters in the country when it comes to covering realignment and college athletics in general. I am hesitant to be dismissive of his reporting. He might have got out in front of it, jumped the gun a little bit, so to speak, but he has subsequently tweeted that he stands by his report. So just because Gonzaga said we haven't moved to the Pac-12 yet doesn't necessarily mean that Gonzaga won't move to the Pac-12. But let's just stop here for a second. First, how do you think it ultimately ends up? Gonzaga stays or leaves? And B, what makes sense to you, regardless of how it ends up? What do you think you would do if you were running, Gonzaga's athletic department?
Yeah, so from just an overarching standpoint, it would be a little bit of a downer, I think, if they went to the Pac-12, because then you have a diminished WCC claiming an automatic bid. I mean, how do you think about it from the standpoint of the other WCC schools? because for so long you've been boxed out of the NCAA tournament.
I would love. You're in what is mostly a one-bid league, and the one school that's usually going to get it just operates on another planet from you. I would rather compete with a bunch of similar type programs than know every March I've got to go to Las Vegas and probably beat Gonzaga to go to the NCAA tournament. If I know it wouldn't be good for the WCC, I'll put it this way: if I'm a coach at another WCC program, get Gonzaga as far away as you can.
If you're Pepperdine or Loyola Marymount,
get them out of here.
This is fantastic from a making the NCAA tournament standpoint, and that now being a possibility in a way that it never was before. So the Spokesman Review, which is the paper of record up there in Gonzaga territory, they kind of had a piece this week saying, I think the number was 3.2 million roughly that Gonzaga received an annual WCC payout. But what McMurphy reported was that Gonzaga would be in line for a full football equivalent share of the Pac-12. And we saw those figures, Gary, 12 to 15 million estimated. But those figures were estimated at the time when the AAC schools were going to be in there. So that money, that 12 to 15, we don't even know if that's real because they haven't signed a TV contract yet. But if those estimates were to come true, and the Pac-12 has a kind of flaky track record of their numbers coming true. Right. But if those numbers were to come true and Gonzaga could triple, quadruple its conference payout on an annual basis, I think from a financial standpoint, that's a no-brainer.
Right.
But what is the valuation now that Memphis, Tulane, South Florida, UTSA, et cetera, have all said no? And now that you got some of these Mountain West schools announcing their commitment to the Mountain West, if that number is only going to be 7 or 8 million per school, is it really worth the hassle, worth the headache to change leagues for relatively, like, it'd be a nice boost if you got to 7 or 8 million, but is it worth it to make that jump if you're Gonzaga?
I would argue yes. I wouldn't call you stupid for arguing no, but I would argue yes. It is true that they have carved out this place in the WCC under Mark Few where, it's set up for them. They dominate their league. They're not held back by their league as it pertains to scheduling. Like, this is the type of WCC programs can't get invited to the Jimmy V or Maui, stuff like that, right? But like Gonzaga can. So they're not held back by their league the way a different program in a similar league would be held back. They can recruit at the highest level. They can win at the highest level. The league has slanted success in their favor by basically guaranteeing them a spot in the WCC tournament semifinals every year. I know nothing is guaranteed, but like, if you finish top 2, you go straight to the semifinals, and they're always going to finish top 2. So I understand it's a good situation. What I think would be important for Gonzaga officials to understand is that just because it has been this way for a while and it is this way right now doesn't mean it will be this way forever. Like, you think you have a similar program in St. Mary's, but how much of that is Randy Bennett and how much of that is really St. Mary's? I don't know, but I'm just saying I'll be shocked if the next St. Mary's coach, whoever that is as successful as Randy has been. So that thing could slip at any moment. Your thing could also slip at any moment. And whether it's Butler, thanks to Brad Stevens, or Wichita State, thanks to Greg Marshall, what we have seen in recent history is when your basketball program is so successful that it is the thing that allows you to upgrade leagues, because typically it would be football or market size or some combination of the two. But when it was Butler, it's really just basketball. It was Brad Stevens men's basketball. That's a brand now. With Wichita State, it was really just basketball. Greg Marshall and the success that he had with, among others, Ron Baker and Fred VanVleet. What history tells us is when you have an opportunity to upgrade leagues because of the strength of your basketball program, you do it. That's what Wichita State did. It is what Butler did.
How's it worked out for them? How's it worked out for Wichita State and Butler?
Well, I think if you just ask Butler, period, would you rather be in the Big East or the Horizon League? It's an easy question to answer. Like,
how many NCAA tournament games have those programs won, though, since they changed leagues?
If the option is be in the Big East or the Horizon, there is no second question. Like, it's as simple, in my opinion, at least, it's as simple as that. Could we have had more conference championships in the Horizon than Big East? Maybe, but like, it's the Horizon. We're in the Big East and we're not in the Horizon anymore. I don't need to know anything else. Wichita State, I would sort of argue the same thing. Although remember the American Athletic Conference they joined is not the American Athletic Conference they're living in right now. And the Greg Marshall thing blew up and they're trying to recover from that. The Wichita State thing might be more of a AAC mistake than a Wichita State mistake. But either way, what we have found is that programs, when you get the opportunity to move up based on the strength of your basketball program, you usually do it. If I were Gonzaga, I would do it. I would know that I'm not joining the old Pac-12 or a Power 4 league or the best conference in America, but you would suddenly be in a league with at least 4 or 5, maybe even competent, top 100-ish basketball programs. And that's a better place to be than where you are.
So they've had opportunities, Gonzaga has, to join the Mountain West in the past. Am I right about that? They've kicked the tires on that. That's been a topic.
I believe, yes, that has been on the table before.
Well, this Pac-12 to me, as it stands now, is even less appealing than the old Mountain West from a basketball point of view, because as things stand on Wednesday afternoon, you're leaving New Mexico in the Mountain West. You're leaving UNLV is on the fence, right? Like that's a program that has some juice and that's got history. And so, I mean, if you're going to do it, to me, you got to have the strongest parts of the old Mountain West in the Pac-12, because if you declined the Mountain West or didn't go down that road in the past, like what's so much more attractive about this Pac-12 from a basketball standpoint than what the old Mountain West had? It's just the Mountain West with a new name.
I would argue this, and I understand the sentiment. I think I would argue it's just better than that. I understand why people make that point. I think it's better than that because you lose a lot of the Mountain West junk. All right. There's a lot of that stuff at the bottom that you don't want anything to do with. You lose that. And then I know Washington State isn't Washington, and I know Oregon State isn't Oregon. If so, those two schools would be in different leagues and wouldn't even be in this situation. But Washington State is better than your typical Mountain West program. Oregon State is better than your typical Mountain West program, or at least is positioned to be. So I think you add some quality men's basketball programs, and obviously San Diego State, but recent success, Colorado State, Boise State, Utah State has had a moment. And then, you add two, they're not the best of the best, otherwise they wouldn't be here. But these are two schools that were recently, quote, Power 5 schools. So you would be joining a power conference, but I think it's a little better, if not notably better, than joining the old Mountain West, because there is better stuff at the top, thanks to having two former Power 5 programs, and you lose a lot of the junk, or at least some of the junk at the bottom. That would be my argument, at least.
Well, you got to consider, too, how much of a force Gonzaga is in the WCC, and there's something to be said for running your league, because they're not. I mean, they run that league. They've got the conference tournament formatted specifically for them. They receive an outsized share of the conference revenue. You go to the Pac-12, they're not going to tailor the conference tournaments specifically to your desires. And you might actually have to win 3 or 4 games in your conference tournament to win the thing, instead of just having an automatic bid to the semifinals. Like, they are the king of their castle. And, from what I've heard, it seems part of the reason why Memphis was willing to stay in the AAC, other than the whole buyout situation, which was ridiculous, is that, hey, they're kind of okay with being the top dog in the AAC. And there's as much allure and attraction in that as there is in, just being one of the guys, so to speak, in the Pac-12. So you got to think about the standing and the stature that Gonzaga would have in the Pac-12, which would just be, hey, we're glad you're here, but you're going to compete just like the rest of these schools that are also quality programs. We're not going to put you on a pedestal above San Diego State, which just played for a national title a couple of years ago, right? Whereas in the WCC, Mark Few can kind of snap his fingers and get stuff done in a way that he couldn't in another league.
True. I wouldn't care. I'd say I'm Gonzaga. I would rather be the best program in this league than the best program in that league. Like this league is going to be better than that league. It just will. It won't be a power conference, but it will be better. You'll have more top 50 teams, more top 75 teams, more top 100 teams, all of that stuff. And if I'm Gonzaga, I still think I'm the best. So I understand the logic, and I'm glad you connected it to Memphis, because we'll go there in a second. But here is my counter argument to the whole Memphis thing, wanting to be the big fish in a little pond, because Memphis is right now, I think, inarguably the best football program in the AAC and the best men's basketball program in the AAC. All right. certainly, if nothing else, they were picked to win both. Memphis football was picked to win the AAC this year. Memphis basketball will be picked to win the AAC this year. You ready for this? That is the definition of big fish in little pond. Your football program is supposed to be the best in the league. Your basketball program is supposed to be the best in the league. You ready for this? Here's the problem with the whole big fish, little pond thing. Nobody in Memphis cares. Nobody cares. You know Memphis. Anybody excited about Memphis basketball season? They're going to be picked to win the league. Nobody cares. Memphis football was picked to win the AAC, was a legitimate candidate to be a college football playoff participant. Season opener, nobody came. Nobody was there because go watch the next game. Nobody will be there. They'll get 20-something thousand. People do not. So even when you are winning this league, your fans aren't satisfied with it. They're not interested in it. And,
yeah.
And I can't. And I listen. I turn on the TV. I see the Keno. It's jam packed, right? So like they're filling up their building for WCC games, but like you can't tell me Gonzaga fans aren't a little bored. Come middle of January,
100%.
they get a little bored.
You'd rather play Colorado State. You'd rather have
go.
Boise, San Diego State in there. Here's another thing, though, that I would have to get clarity on if I were Gonzaga before I make this jump. Under its old construction, the Pac-12 played 20 league games.
Mm-hmm.
The WCC currently only plays 16, which allows Gonzaga to schedule more non-conference games of note, which are critical to their resume building and to their ability to have quad 1 victories and even quad 2 victories in some cases, because there just aren't many of those available in the WCC. There would be plenty of quad 2s available to you in this new look Pac-12, but there wouldn't be a whole lot of quad 1s. And if they're still dead set on playing 20 games in conference like they used to, then you don't have as much wiggle room in the non-con to schedule the way you need to schedule to ensure that you're an at-large team.
That is a good point and absolutely something they'd have to do. Like if you're Mark Few, you don't want a new league telling you, hey, remember those 4 games you go out and get and you play Baylor somewhere and you do a one-off at Madison Square Garden. Well, you're not going to be able to do those anymore because we got to fill that with. You're not going to tell me how to. That's something that has to be discussed and negotiated and all of that. And if I felt like they said we're playing 20 and that's non-negotiable, then that might be something I look at. Everything you can imagine and some things you probably can't need to be considered when making a decision of this magnitude. I just think if I were Gonzaga, for all the reasons already stated, I think I would make the move. I don't know what they're going to do. Right now, there are still conflicting reports, but I think if I were in charge of that athletic department, I would be in charge of that university. I'd be ready to move to a new league where I think know that wherever our program goes after Mark Few retires, part of Mark Few's legacy is going to be that he was so awesome at his job, he got us into a better basketball league.
Yeah. But you're not a bulldog, Gary. You're a Boilermaker.
I know. But I try to put myself in these different situations whenever I can. I do want to talk further about Memphis and why I'm not confused about why they turned it down, because I understand their rationale. I just disagree with the rationale. We'll talk through that. We'll do it next. But first, let's pay some bills, get a word from our partners.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
So, David Cobb, like you mentioned, Memphis has decided, for a variety of reasons, to remain a quote-unquote big fish in little pond, stay in the AAC. There's a lot of explanations that have been trotted out as rationalizations for passing on the opportunity to, again, upgrade leagues. Nobody is pretending that joining the Pac-12 under these circumstances is the same as joining the old Pac-12. Nobody is pretending that Memphis just passed on an opportunity to join a Power 4 conference. That's not what this is. It's not what it's going to be. But what it will be, I'm pretty confident of, is the best of the rest. If you call in the Big 12 and the Big 10 and the SEC and the ACC the Power 4, and you take them, set them over here, and you say, okay, what's going to be the best all sports conference starting in 2026, other than those four, I genuinely believe it will be the Pac-12. Memphis has passed on a chance to join that league, and there's a lot of different reasons. Among them, it was going to maybe cost $25 million to get out of the AAC. Reportedly, the Pac-12 was only willing to pay about 10% of that. There are travel concerns, which are obvious and undeniable. There's a concern about the Pac-12 having no television deal in place. Let's stop here for a second, because this is the one that I hear it and I go, hey, well, like, what did you expect? I hear people say, well, Memphis can't move now because like the TV deal's not even in place. You don't even know if there's TV. Well, there's 5 Mountain West universities that just moved without a TV deal in place. And the reason they're doing it is because they're making educated guesses about what it's going to look like. I wouldn't trust Pac-12 officials and or their consultants who just told you, oh, it's going to be 15 million, because Memphis did reportedly say, hey, cool, if you think it's going to be 15 million, just guarantee us 15 million a year and at a minimum, and we're ready to go. I don't know if they actually said we're ready to go, but they were like, can you guarantee it? And they were, well, I don't know if we can guarantee. Okay, so like I understand the skepticism that it was really going to be 15 million. But if it was really going to be so cut and dried as, if they don't have a TV deal in place, we can't do this. Well, they were never going to have a TV deal in place until they have a conference in place. Like you got to do one before the other. You can have an idea, but you're not going to get a signed document until you got a league with at least 8 football playing members. So if you were waiting on that, you're waiting on something that was never going to come. But I do think you could do exactly what these Mountain West schools have done, which is, all right, what are we here in the Mountain West? And what do we think will be in the Pac-12 based on some educated guesses? And then you do just have to take a leap of faith. And this is a situation where I wish Memphis would have taken a leap of faith, because I know what you're in. I don't know what you would be joining exactly, but I know what you're in. And I know as a lifelong Memphian, what you're in is not something anybody cares about anymore. And it's going to be a real hard sell to your boosters and fans to try to get them excited about anything going forward. And that trickles into a lot of different areas, specifically fundraising and season ticket sales.
Yeah, but on the flip side of that, Fred Smith, founder and CEO of FedEx, is building you a football stadium. His name is on the basketball arena that you play in. He's funding your NIL. And now you got to go to him and say, hey, Fred, we need $20 million to leave this 2005 Honda Civic so that we can go upgrade and get into a 2007 Toyota Camry. You down? You down, Fred?
Well, okay. So I don't know that you got to go back to Fred specifically, because I understand you put a lot of pressure on FedEx, just constantly expecting them to solve your problems. They're amazing at doing it, but you can't keep doing that over and over again. So I don't know that I'd go back to Fred, but I guess I would just say this. This is one of the things that's always frustrated me about the University of Memphis. My entire life, they've been coming up with reasons why they can't do things. They just always tell you why something's impossible or too hard. Once upon a time, it was an on-campus football stadium. I had said, you need an on-campus football stadium that is more appropriately sized, because people who aren't familiar with Memphis football might not know. They play in like a 65,000 seat football stadium. It is off campus, not far from campus, but off campus, not in the best part of town, and massive. Even when Memphis has a good football team, you cannot fill that up with an American Athletic Conference schedule. Okay. You basically need Tennessee or Ole Miss to even have a chance to fill that thing up. So I've said for decades, literally decades, you need an on-campus appropriately sized football stadium. A, so that, it looks good. B, so that it serves as a magnet to draw people back to campus. I spent years on that campus.
How many?
I don't know, but it doesn't matter. My kids are growing up 20 minutes from that campus. They've never been on it. My children have never been to the University of Memphis proper campus. We live 20 minutes from there. What an on-campus football stadium does is it draws people back to campus. Like my kid, you ready for this? My kids were just on the Ole Miss campus Saturday for an Ole Miss football game. My kids have seen the Ole Miss campus more than they've seen the Memphis campus. It draws people back to campus. It allows me to look at buildings I used to work in, learn in, sleep in. tell my kids, yeah, this is where I did this is where I did that. Like there's real value there. And you try to make this case and they would tell you, well, we can't do it. There's nowhere to put it. There's nowhere to put it. Then they had an associate athletic director named Bill Lansden. And he like actually said, you know what? Let's look at this. Had all the plans. I mean, we can put it right here. I mean, all the plans. It's done. You know what they said? Well, how would we get the money? You know what I always said? I don't know because I don't work in fundraising. But what I do know is the majority of Division I football programs have on-campus stadiums. Somehow, all these other schools figure it out. So why can't you figure it out? How does everybody else figure it out but you? I don't know how to build an on-campus football stadium. I just know that most schools do. So why can't you? Well, sounds hard. This is the same thing. And that's a long-winded way, I know, and I apologize, to get to this point. How are you going to pay the $25 million, whatever it would have ended up being, exit fee to get out of the AAC? I don't know. But you know what I do know? Most schools figure it out. How many schools do you know that were offered membership by a better league? All things being equal, they'd like to go, but they more or less said we can't go in part because of the exit fee. You cover college athletics. You tell me. I asked that from an honest place. I really don't know the answer. I know it can't be much.
Well, no, here's the deal. You got that Tiger Blue running through your veins. And so like, I'll push back on you hard with the Gonzaga stuff because it makes for good debate. I feel ill-equipped to push back on you with Memphis because I didn't go to Memphis, right? I'm from there, but hey, so I'll ride with you on that. But what about this? What about this? What if it's a simple dollars and cents cold calculation of $20 million exit fee for a non-guaranteed projection of 12 to 15 million per year in annual payout? I don't see that you can recoup $20 million if you're only getting $3 to $4 million more per year. That's going to take you.
Oh, it's a math problem. I got that. It's a math problem, but for me, you can't think of it as strictly as a math problem. And I know there's math people who would say, what? But when this is college athletics. This isn't a string of Wendy's restaurants. This is college athletics. So how would you ever, or how long would it take you to recoup that 20 million or 25 million? I have no idea. Maybe never, or at least a long time. Right. But the alternative to trying to figure out a math problem is remaining in a place that feels hopeless, is remaining in a place nobody cares about. Again, I can't stress this enough. If your goal is to be the big fish in the little pond, you're already that, and your fan base already doesn't care. Season tickets are down in basketball, football, attendance numbers. They can keep saying, yeah, Memphis sells out FedEx Forum, but that was under John Calipari more than a decade ago. They ain't come close to selling that place out in a long time.
Here's the thing. You can't deny that the Memphis Athletic Department is in a pretty good position right now. From the NIL standpoint, say what you will about the chaos under Penny Hardaway, it has not bottomed out. They are still going to be the preseason favorite to win the AAC in basketball this year. Football is coming off of a 10-win season, beat Florida State, played a clunker against Navy, but still has a really good team. You got the stadium renovation underway. That's going to be magnificent. It's going to right-size that stadium quite a bit. Like, as you mentioned, that football stadium is way too big. This renovation is going to help with that. They're going to make that thing a lot better, a lot more attractive. And then you do still have the ACC thing looming out there on the horizon. And I know it's silly to put your eggs in that basket when you've been burned so many times in the past. But look at all the cage rattling that Florida State and Clemson are doing in the ACC, and tell me you feel confident that those two schools are going to be in the ACC come 2030, and that, do you? I mean, there's no way you can feel confident.
I don't know. That is a thing that should be considered. It is something I would consider. I'm tired of dreaming. I'm tired of dreaming about dreams that never come true. I say that not as a college basketball columnist or analyst. I say that as a Memphian. I'm tired. For 2 decades, you've been playing pick me. Please pick me. I mean, like quite literally begging the Big 12 to pick you. They don't even consider you. So I'm never ruling out that the ACC could lose big brands and then need to replace them and then come get Memphis. I understand that. I'm just tired. That's what we've been waiting on, something like that forever. I'm tired of waiting. And beyond that, it does feel likely that the only way the ACC ever comes and gets you, and there's no guarantee they will, but if they do, it would be because they lost some of their biggest brands. And then are you really joining the ACC, or is that just the new ACC, like the new Pac-12 is the new Pac-12, and you're really not joining a Power 4 conference then either, as much as the Big Ten, SEC, conferences, and then the ACC and the new Pac-12 are battling it out for the best of the rest. Like the whole ACC thing Memphis fans hold on to, like that might not be a Power 4 league by the time they want you anyway. And either way, they might just decide we'd rather take East Carolina and Coastal Carolina. You never know.
No, come on. If everything we've heard, and it's true, it's not just smoke. Memphis is the most attractive non-power conference brand on the market. I'd rather be in a league with Boston College, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Louisville. I'd rather be in that conference.
I would too. This is a bird in the hand thing for me.
Yeah, but you go to the Pac-12, you lock yourself into some, you think 20 million is a hefty exit fee from the AAC. What kind of exit fee would you be locking yourself into in the Pac-12? And then 3 years from now, the ACC wants you, but now instead of the 20 million that you paid to go to the Pac-12, now you got to pay another 50 or whatever to get from the Pac-12 to the ACC. So I'm just saying, like we might look back on this in 10 years and think, okay, good thing they didn't jump because they're in a much better position now than they would have been if they'd gone.
I don't rule that out. I think it would be foolish for somebody to stand here and insist there's no way this is going to work out for Memphis. It might work out. They could end up in the ACC. And let me be clear, if I haven't been, I'd much rather Memphis be in the ACC than the Pac-12. I would just much rather Memphis go to the Pac-12 now than sit in the AAC and hope for some version of the ACC to come someday, when Memphians have been waiting for more than 2 decades for somebody like that to come someday, and they never have. And I know, and then we can take this wherever you want to take it. But there's some interesting numbers here that just sort of hammer home. No, Memphis would not have been joining a Power 4 league, but it would have been joining a much better league, because there's a lot of this stuff out there about how much better is it? And it's a reasonable question to ask, but I think the answer is significantly better from a brand perspective, and also just from a quality of the members perspective. So here's one thing I did right now, and this is just a snapshot of this moment. Take it for whatever you want to take it for, but it is a snapshot of this moment. And I think it illustrates an important point. If somebody is out there arguing, there's really not a whole lot of difference between the AAC and the new Pac-12. I think there is. Right now, with Memphis in the AAC, the AAC has exactly one football member in the top 60 at MasseyRatings.com. And the only reason I bring that up is it's because I have it bookmarked, and it's a computer ranking of college football teams. Smarter people than I can tell me how reliable or not it is.
Yo, Ken Palm needs to start a football site.
Okay.
Call him and tell him. It would be great. Yeah.
It actually would be great. But Massey Ratings is out there. You can look at it if you want to. Right now, the AAC has one football member in the top 60 at MasseyRatings.com, and it is Memphis. If you took Memphis right now and put it in the Pac-12 with the other confirmed Pac-12 members, that league would then have 5 football members in the top 60. Specifically, number 21 Washington State, number 32 Oregon State, number 49 Memphis, number 53 Boise State, and number 59 Fresno State. If UNLV joins, which is on the table reportedly, that would make 6, because UNLV right now 45th at MasseyRatings.com. So like AAC with Memphis, currently one top 60 team. Pac-12 with Memphis would currently have 5, and if you add UNLV, it would be 6. 5-1 or 6-1. That's football. Men's basketball. Right now, Memphis is the only AAC member in the top 80 of the preseason rankings at BartTorek.com. That's crazy. There's one top 80 school in the AAC, Memphis, number 32. If you take Memphis right now, put it in the new Pac-12, that league would have 5 members in the top 80 at BartTorek.com. Specifically, number 32 Memphis, number 67 Boise State, number 77 San Diego State, number 79 Utah State, number 80 Colorado State. Add Gonzaga, they're in the top 10. That would give you 6. 5 or 6 in the top 80 compared to 1 in the top 80. No, it's not the Big 12. No, it's not the Big 10. No, it's not the SEC. No, it's not the ACC. But it is inarguably better than the AAC. Yeah. And that is just one way to to highlight that point.
Yeah. Gary, you can also use our CBS Sports 134.
That's what I should have done. That's my bad.
Yeah. Myself, Chip Patterson, who some of your listeners also know, contribute to that with Sunday ballots. But it probably would bear out the exact same results that you mentioned. So, yeah, clearly from a competition standpoint, Memphis left something on the table by choosing to stay back in the AAC. I think it would have been easier to sell tickets to a lot of these conference games if you have Boise State coming in for football and San Diego State coming in for basketball, et cetera, et cetera. The other caveat to mention there, since I'm kind of in the yin to your yang, I guess, is that basically,
which I appreciate, by the way. I like the pushback. I enjoy it.
Well, the TV rights package that the Pac-12 would be selling to a network would be the Pac-12 has dissolved. There's only a few late night games now. We will be your late night fourth window on Saturday night in football and your late night during the midweek in basketball. We will play those games for you. And if you're Memphis, especially if you're South Florida, you're talking about games that are going to be starting at 9, 10, maybe even 11 o'clock local time. That's tough. And that's something that you really got to think about, especially from the basketball side of things on the travel. Because if you're playing a Wednesday night, 9:30 p.m. Central tip, you're not getting out of the arena until 12:30 a.m. Central. You're not getting to the airport until 2 a.m. And then you got to fly across the entire country, and you're getting back to campus at 6 in the morning. Small deal in comparison to it all, but just something another thing I'm gonna throw out there. When you're making your list of pros and cons, that's another thing.
It's on there.
It's on the cons list. Yeah,
okay, for sure. Travel is an issue. I guess I'd argue this. I say this as a proud University of Memphis alum. If Stanford is comfortable sending their student athletes all over the country, then I don't know why the University of Memphis should be uncomfortable with it.
Okay, that was the most silly thing of this whole conversation was the fact that, well, the Pac-12's back. Maybe Stanford and Cal will come back.
They're not going. They're not. No, there's a reason they got to that side of the fence.
What? Because
we're willing to go.
These elite academic institutions that were like, they're going to want to be friends with Boise State and Fresno State, right? Like,
I just if Stanford's cool with it, I think the University of Memphis, which is, by the way, under investigation for an academic fraud case. Let's stop it with the whole, we got to put the student athletes first. I'm old enough to remember when we used to play a day of college basketball 24 hours straight. You'd have a college basketball game tipping off at 2 in the morning. Everybody was fine with what it meant for the student athletes then. We would be fine with this. We don't care about that as much as we say. Perhaps we should, but we don't. And frankly, from a fan perspective, I'd rather watch Memphis and San Diego State at midnight than Memphis and Rice at 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, you put the game I'd rather your games be on at 7 o'clock Central. But if I got to wait till 11 o'clock Central because you're on the West Coast, but it's you're at VS Arena playing San Diego State, I'll stay up. I'll get a nap in, and I'll be there.
Here's the analogy. The Grizzlies have been in the Western Conference for forever.
There you go.
And the Western Conference has been way better than the Eastern Conference. Right. And you'd rather have the Lakers and the Warriors coming into your building than the Cavaliers and the Pistons. Yeah. So, I feel you on that. On that.
Every single thing like that about travel or about time of competition, it's all real things that need to be, put out there, and let's talk about them. But when I talk about them, I tend to land on, I'd still rather just be in the better neighborhood with the better neighbors. I'd just rather be in the better neighborhood with the better neighbors. That's all.
You can have the nicest house in the neighborhood. Everybody can look up to you when they drive to take their kids to school and be like, wow.
Yeah. You ever had the nicest house in a not so great neighborhood? Let me tell you what ends up happening. You start hating your neighbors because they won't cut their yard, because they just left a water hose laying out in the driveway, because they got a broken down truck sitting on the side of the house. That's what your neighbors don't typically elevate to you. You just end up hating them because they don't even try to be you.
Wow, you're really throwing shade at East Carolina right now, aren't you?
I would just rather be in a neighborhood with good neighbors. I don't have to have the best house. I just like to have better neighbors.
Fair. Hey, I live in a townhouse community where every house is the same.
Okay.
Every house is the same.
I live our neighborhood. Every house is not the same, but I like my neighbors, and I'm not looking to leave. And the reason I'm not looking to leave is because I don't hate everybody I'm surrounded by. I have my moments though. Let's end on this, because I do think there's a comp here, and I want to get your thoughts on it, and then we'll get out of here because this is probably too long to be talking about anything in the middle of September other than the NFL or college football. You know how you'll hear this from an athletic director every once in a while, school president, fan base, whatever, and they've had a coach there. He's been there like 6 years, 9 years, whatever it is. And it's not terrible. Like he's doing okay, but people just don't care anymore. You know, like you're probably thinking of a program right now.
Syracuse football under Dino Babers. Yeah.
Whatever. It's like, okay, this guy's doing okay. And it's like he hadn't done guys who have done worse than him over the past 2 years are keeping their jobs. So like, we don't have to fire this guy, but it just feels like it's time to do something else because our fans are out on this. Honestly, that is how Josh Pastner's reign at Memphis ended. The fans were just tired of it. Josh was fine. He was fine. And then the fans just got tired of it because it wasn't what they imagined it should be. And at that point, the University of Memphis like literally paid Josh Pastner more than $1 million to take the Georgia Tech job. They paid him to go away. They didn't owe him anything. He owed them. They paid him to go away. And if you ask them, why did you do that? Why would you pay a coach to go away? Incentivize him to leave. What they would tell you is because our fans didn't believe in this anymore. And it didn't really matter what he did at Memphis anymore. The fans they were bored with it and out on it and ready for something new. So then you hire something new and that didn't work. But like at the very least, it gives your fan base something new to believe in and get excited about. That's what this felt like an opportunity to. Like maybe it would have long-term been a decision that you look back on and go, maybe we jumped too soon. I don't think it would have been, but I don't rule that out. I just think that this feels very much like a time where it's a conference instead of a coach, but think of it as just a coach that nobody believes in anymore. And even if the next thing ain't great, we need to get to the next thing to give somebody something new to care about and believe in and get excited about. If nothing else, the Pac-12 presented that opportunity for Memphis, and they decided to just stick with the same old coach, if you'll follow the analogy, that everybody is already, pretty much done with.
Well, who is to say that in 2 years we can't revisit this whole conversation? Let's pretend Florida State and Clemson, they get kumbaya with the ACC. They work out their differences. There will be no vacancies in the near future in the ACC. Memphis looks out to the Pac-12, and hey, they do have a media rights agreement that's leading to an annual payout of $12 to $15 million per school. Memphis is still the most attractive option for expansion. And the Pac-12, if they were so desperate, and here's the thing that the last few days have validated, how much influence Memphis had with the Pac-12. Because when Memphis said no, the other AAC schools said no. Now we've just seen chaos because for some parts of the last 36 hours, it's felt like this Pac-12 thing might collapse before it even started in the wake of Memphis saying no. If Memphis has that much influence now, who's to say that in 2 years, if things aren't going the way that either side wants, that they can't come back to the table and figure something out? I interpreted this as no for now, but in this era of conference realignment, it doesn't have to be no forever.
Great point. One that I had not made anywhere. I've been talking about this stuff. Like when you say no and they move on, it feels like it's over forever. But if there's one thing we know about conference realignment, it is that it is never over forever. We didn't think we'd be having these conversations 2 weeks ago. All right. So there is always a scenario where we could get back here. And absolutely, there is a not implausible scenario where the Pac-12 gets a TV deal in place. They get a membership in place. Memphis continues to hold a certain level of whatever within the world of college athletics outside of the Power Four. And they revisit this, and Memphis says, okay, we didn't want to come in September 2024 because, buddy, we didn't really know if you guys knew what you were doing. But now you got this TV deal in place, and we like what this is doing and that's doing. And if you'll take us now, well, yeah, absolutely, that could happen. I don't know that it will, but it a scenario we're dealing with, whether it's next year, the year after, the year after. As always, we'll see. But, hey, either way, I appreciate you being here and listening to me rant about my alma mater passing on what I believe would have been a better opportunity. Not everybody would be patient enough to do that, but I thank you for doing it.
Hey, brother, I've been a part of this conversation now for a while. I'm like an outsider, so I don't have the investment. I'm like an insider who's also an outsider, and I don't know. Some people hate that, but I'd like to think that it's a different perspective, right?
No, and I appreciate you noting, like, hey, I'm pushed back. I like that. I like having Norlander and I tend to agree a lot, like on most things. And even he, like, when he pushes back, it's always from a kind place. He's a sweet man. I like it when you will like actually say, okay, I hear you, but here's a counterpoint. What do you think about that? The back and forth's fun. So
if you like it, I'll just start F-bombing you next time.
Call me slurs. Let's see if you can survive calling me slurs on the air. Appreciate you being here. We'll do it again real soon. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle. He's a legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for listening to, watching the Iron College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So do that. We'll talk to you again real soon.